Maybe the next game we can play at is Goat Simulator.
It's broken! It's broken!
maybe the next game we can play at is Goat Simulator.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to SKR. It's the 5th round of Season 7, and we're at MONZA, home of the Tifosi. And as you can see for yourself, seems like intermediates are going to be very necessary. Seems to still have a bit of a pause on the screen. Hopefully we'll be underway shortly. Let me know who's watching, who's in the comment section. Remember, no quali, we're going straight into the sprint race. I believe there was supposed to be some sort of a break. Doesn't seem to be the case. Everybody's off. Why do I have no data? There we go. And already lots of action. Start of the race actually caught me off guard there. Everything happened so quickly. Thought we were having a little bit of a break. But there was no break. Chums leads the way in the McLaren. He's got a penalty of some sort. Let's see what that is. It's too early on to be track infringements. 5-second penalty for Chums. So I wonder if that was some sort of a collision. Everybody out there is on the intermediate tyre. And we have a safety car. It's the first one of the evening. Mr. Rem. And remember guys, this is a sprint race that will determine the starting grid. So think of it as a quali session. And that means for Mr. Rem, he's given himself a big job for later on tonight. His first job is to, well, he's going to have to come through that field in the feature race. He's going to start no greater than P16 unless anybody is disqualified. Just a 9-lap race. I'm sure the guys will be pretty happy with that. In these conditions, you don't want to spend too much time out there, and hopefully for all of them, this does not translate to weather in the feature race. But as we saw, very quick start to the race. And I wonder if all the guys were expecting that, if all the guys were quick on the controller. We may have a situation where at least some of these guys didn't have time to put the setup on that car. So you may have a few drivers going around here in a car that they're not particularly happy with. It's not the setup they've been practicing with. They're just going to have a slightly awkward drive for the remainder of the evening. Of course, in 2024 that rule has changed. Parc Fermé briefly opens between the sprint race and the race, so you are able to make adjustments. Setup becomes fully open. Hopefully that will feature in the new game. They won't forget to throw that in. And of course the DRS rule changes, where DRS now comes into effect earlier at the start of the race. Chums leads the way, just ahead of Smurf, Spikes, Dixie Killer, Afrodox. Those are your top 5. Still under a safety car. And we're going to have another lap behind the safety car. We've got Revolution catching at the back of the field. This should be the last lap under safety car. Let's ride with the leader. If you're a slow driver like me, this is a very unfamiliar sight. Driving behind the safety car, because that means you're leading. Smurf just behind, and you can see what the drivers can see. Of course, some of these drivers will be using cockpit camera. That means they'll see even less than what you can see on your screens now. Much more obscure angle, much more difficult to see who's side by side with you. Spikes in P3. How many times have you seen an Aston Martin in P3 recently? Fernando Alonso, not the other one. Surely we will get confirmation anytime soon that safety car will be in, field is together, or is it? We now have an Aston Martin trailing at the rear of the field, but he should be able to catch up. I think we're just waiting. Surely not another lap. We do get confirmation. It's a very late confirmation. We're going to do another. That's right, we're waiting for the Aston Martin. We're going to do another lap. Which means just under 50% of the race will have been completed under a safety car. Not much action to commentate on in this sprint race. Seemed like it could be exciting. Monza in the wet, just 9 laps. But unfortunately, safety car came out early on. It's been out there for a while. Drivers would like to get on with it. And what was a 9-lap sprint is now going to become a 4-lap sprint. Hopefully everyone is wide awake. Safety car is going to come in this lap surely. Don't want to be caught napping at the restart. Things can get very messy here in the rain. You don't want cars side by side with you into turn 1. And if you're in P2, keep your eyes on that leader. Can't let him get away, especially in these conditions. Sometimes really difficult to overtake. See no DRS. All the drivers have been behind the safety car for a long time now, so they'll all have full ERS batteries. But they'll have to be very selective over what parts of the track they choose to use that battery. Certain parts of the track I would not recommend. Welcome to Ian in the comment section. Yeah, we have this is a sprint race. It's got the sprint race in the inters. It's still waiting to see what will happen in the feature race. We'll have more of this. But rain always makes it interesting. We're about to see the restart. Lap 4 of 9. It's going to be lap 5 of 9 when we get over the start finish line. And Chums leads the way. AlphaTauri P2. We just see Chums ahead in the distance. Let's see if everybody's able to get through. Hopefully so. Is that an AlphaTauri? Not sure. I think that's an AlphaTauri. This is an AlphaTauri that's gone off circuit. We've got a caution. Hopefully it stays at just a caution. Otherwise we're going to have 70%, 80% of this race behind safety car. Luckily that caution's gone away. Chums leads the way. Smurf P2, Spikes P3, Aphrodite on the move. He's now up into P4. Convoy P5. We have another caution. And another. Drivers obviously leaving the circuit. This phase P6, and then the 2 Alfa Romeos taking the last 2 points positions. Dixie Killer and Pantrastar 7 and 8. Remember, just the top 8 score points in the sprint race. And you can also think of this sprint race as a quali session. This is going to set your grid for the MONZA feature race. Chums leads the way. Smurf not far behind, but remember, no DRS available. There's spray everywhere, and it's so much easier to miss your braking point. Afrodox continues to make up positions, and now the AlphaTauri's made a mistake. He's cut across the chicane and he's come right into the path of Afrodox. Luckily for Afrodox, he's got all of his front wing. He's in no mood to hang around. And there we go, AlphaTauri. Ooh, I think he's missed that completely. There we go. Chums leads the way while the two behind him scuff it out. That's good news for Chums. The more they battle for P2, the more he can have clean air to himself. He's the only man out on circuit that won't have an incredible amount of spray. He's dealing with the wet weather like everybody else, but at least he does not have that spray ahead of him. It really makes a difference. You know, Ferrari, over the weekend we were actually testing some new anti-spray covers from the FIA. Hopefully they're just prototypes, because the pictures did look quite interesting. Smurf in P3, Chums P2, Afrodox has gone all the way up into the lead, one pass after the other. Let's just have a look at that position change screen. Afrodox, he's made up 12 positions since the start of the race. FaZe has made up 11 positions since the start of the race, and Conboy, well, he's on 10. Those three drivers have made a lot of progress. This is Conboy. He's made up 10 positions. And this is FaZe just behind him. He's made up 11 positions. How is that possible? Venom has done 2 stops and he's in P7. Of course, I'm sure both those stops were done under the safety car. Look at these penalties. We have a 5-second penalty for FaZe, 5-second penalty for Chums, 3-second penalty for Afrodox. And that means Smurf in a very strong position here. Doesn't need to pass Afrodox, just needs to stay within 3 seconds. That's a lot easier said than done. That is one very quick driver. And as I say that, he goes purple, 28.6, fastest lap of the race. He now gets some clean air. He gets out of the spray. And he's just enjoying himself. Chums, P3, led most of the race, now starting to fall back. Smurf leads that group for P2. That's position under threat. P1 looks very comfortable at the moment, almost 4 seconds the gap at the front now. Afrodox absolutely running away in the rain. He seems to love these conditions. Well, if you've seen him in some other races, he seems to love all conditions. Conboy now up into P3. Things getting a little messy in the rain. Chums P4, FaZe P5. Also one of those drivers looking to make his way up through the field. He's been following Conboy through the field. Now he needs to get past Chums. The horse has done that already. He's up into P3. Smurf doing a good job in P2. He's been there pretty much since the start of the race. Hasn't fallen back through the field. Remember, the fast drivers will be coming from the back. The drivers that start at the front, well, they're lowest in the championship. Tend to be slower. Tend to get swallowed up as the race goes on. So Smurf's doing a fantastic job to stay where he is, and more importantly, he's got no penalties next to his name. FaZe doing a good job, but look at the penalties. 8 seconds. It's not going to do him any good. Afrodox. Was that? No, that was Convoy. Convoy making the pass on Smurf. Smurf going down to P3. Is it briefly? Will he come back at the Haas? Don't think he will. It will be a brave maneuver if he does. This is the last lap. Lap 9 of 9. The gap is 5.5 seconds for the lead. Convoy and Smurf still fighting it out to decide P2, P3. Pantry Star in 4th position, but he's a little bit too far away from those podium positions. Venom still looking for P4. It's late in the race, but he wants to start on the 2nd row rather than the 3rd. Remember, this sets your grid order. Chums in P6. Remember, he led the race for so long. He got us away at the safety car restart. Now he's down to P6. Smurfs still on those podium positions. No penalties next to his name. It seems pretty comfortable. Pantry Star 2.5 seconds down the road. Afrodox does have a penalty, but it'll only affect his race time, not his position, because that gap is much larger than 3 seconds. Afrodox will go over the line to take victory in the sprint race and to take pole position for the feature. It's the race coming to an end really quickly because all of the cars are close together. We spent a lot of that race behind the safety car, and then we just had 4 laps of racing towards the end. This is Spikes, and if you're wondering why he's at the back, well, look at the front of that car. In fact, I think he's doing a good job of getting that car around Parabolica without a front wing in this weather. Spikes comes over the line. At least he won't be starting last. That'll go to the driver who retired from this race. That was the Red Bull. Driver of the day goes to Afrodox, obviously coming from the rear of the field to take the victory, and by quite some margin. So your sprint race results: Afrodox taking the victory, Convoy P2, Smurf P3, that's your podium. Then Pantry Star, Venom, Skull, Logic and Chums making up your points positions. Dixie Killer P9, Louis P10, they're followed by FaZe, Top Gun, Revolution, Andre. It's Spikes, and Mr. M was our only DNF. Oh, you look at that. FaZe was pushed down all the way down to P11. Shows you what penalties can do. And if guys were racking up 8 seconds worth of penalties in a 9-lap race, which a lot of those laps were under safety car, then hopefully that's a wake-up call for the feature race. And relief for all the drivers. Maybe not for the viewers at home. They'd love to see a wet race. I'd love to see a wet race. But I think the drivers much prefer these conditions. Now obviously, like I mentioned a little earlier on in the stream, I believe there was supposed to be a 3-minute break right at the start, just so everybody could select their setups and do all of that. But instead we had a very quick start. We got going very quickly, and I don't know if everybody was able to get in their setups. And if you spend a lot of time on this game, you know that in order to be this quick, you practice a lot. These guys try different setups, they try different things. Eventually they find that setup that's right for them around a certain circuit. And forgetting to set it could mean the car doesn't feel quite right. As far as Afrodox goes, I think he got his setup right. Or if that's what he's driving looks like with a handicap, well, that's concerning. Hey Death Queen, how are you? Welcome back. Showing your support for Andre and Skull. Also try and remind me in the chat if there's anyone in particular during a part of the race that you'd like to see some footage of. Sometimes the driver can go for the entire stream with me not focusing on the car, so if you want to see the progress of a certain driver and seem not to be paying attention to that driver, let me know. I'll give you a bit of a race update. Obviously we're looking at the pits for a slightly extended time, so I think that the break that was supposed to happen at the start is happening now. So obviously round 5 of season 7, and there's not much more time on this game. F123 will soon be venturing off into the next game, and who knows what it holds. 5 red lights, and when they go out we get underway, and we are underway. Mercedes versus Haas. How many times will you hear that? Into turn 1, and who's going to come out on top? Convoy, Afrodox, Smurf, Pantry Star, all into turn 1. Everything looking clean so far. Let's go a little further back. I think everybody got through that first chicane cleanly, and that's much better than what we saw in the sprint race. Obviously there was already a bit of a mess in the sprint race in that first chicane. Afrodox leads the way. The rest of the field will be worrying about that car getting too far up the road. Smurf in P2 doing a good job, had a great sprint race. Convoy P3, we have a caution. Hopefully nothing comes of that. Logic P4, Pantry Star P5. Venom not far away. In the first of the Aston Martins, his teammate down in P16. We saw him crawling to the line in the sprint race with a very broken wing. And he started right from the back as a result of DNFing from the sprint race. It's up into P13, that was Mr. Rem. So he's made up 3 positions since the start of the race. Afrodox almost out of, there we go, he is out of DRS range at the end of lap 1. And we're going to see those purple laps coming down a lot, because that was just the first lap. Now Smurf coming under all sorts of pressure. Does he defend to the left? Does he defend to the right? At the end, he's not able to go either way, because he has a car on each side of him. There's a double overtake. And Smurf falls down to P4 in one fell swoop. Convoy and Logic getting that done cleanly. Now they're getting into a bit of a battle between each other. They need to ensure that they get up the road if they're going to challenge that Mercedes-Benz. If they get caught in a squabble, could help the already quick driver up the road get even further up the road. Further back in the field, Andre feels like he should be in a McLaren for some reason. But Andre in the AlphaTauri P14, it's pretty realistic, that. More or less where Daniel Ricciardo would be. His teammate up the road in P4. Smurf had a fantastic sprint race. Still doing a good job in the feature race, but starting to go backwards. We saw a double overtake on him on the last lap. And now, Pantry Star, Venom, another two get past, and Smurf falls down into P6. FaZe, another very quick driver that was heavily handicapped by all the penalties he got in the sprint race. He's going to want to keep those penalties clean. He's currently in P6 and he's challenging Smurf. Smurf has been falling down the order. He was really able to hold his position in that sprint race, and sometimes that's just the difference between the dry and the wet. Guys are a lot more reluctant to try the overtakes in the wet. Smurf was able to stay out front for a lot longer, but in the feature race he's really fallen down the field and he's under pressure. We said FaZe needed to stay out of the penalties column, and I think we may have cursed him. FaZe has gone into that penalties column for the first time in the race, and it's a 3-second penalty already. We've got a car spinning. Was that a Mercedes? We look for the car that's falling down the field. Was that a Mercedes? I think that was a Mercedes. No, it wasn't. It was an AlphaTauri. Smurf suddenly falls to the back of the field. P14, Dixie Killer becomes the first retirement of the evening. I wonder if Smurf and Dixie Killer had some sort of contact that we didn't see. But definitely one car retired. We have a caution. But no sign of a safety car as of yet. Of course, that will leave 15 drivers in the field. Top 10 get points. Have been recent suggestions in the F1 paddock of increasing the points positions down to P15. Don't really know if I'd like to see that or not. I think that's how it works in MotoGP, down to P15. Logic is in P2, but look behind him. He's got a queue. It's Convoy, it's Pantry Star, it's Venom, it's FaZe. Everybody's now behind that Alpine. FaZe, he's really quick, but that penalty, surely it's going to come back to bite him, just as they did in the sprint race. Of course, things can be different if we don't have safety cars. These cars will spread out naturally between the quicker driver and the slower driver. You get gaps over the course of the race, and if that is the case, we may be lucky with some of those penalties. But as you know, if we have a safety car towards the end of the race, those gaps aren't able to form, those penalties can cripple you. Here is Venom getting awfully close to Pantry Star. All of these drivers juggling, looking for position, and all the while there's a Mercedes up the road in clean air, not fighting anyone and having a blast. Pantry Star also at the back of that queue, not quite at the back of the queue. Venom is the car at the back of the queue. All of those cars in a battle for P2. We have a bit of a gap down to the second Alpine of FaZe, and he's coming under pressure from a Ferrari. That is the Ferrari of Skull, and if you're going to win a race for Ferrari, this is the one to win. Don't know if you're going to be able to win unless SAFRL makes quite the shocker. But at least let's get a Ferrari on the podium in Monza. Many think of Monza as the home of the Tifosi, and in fact, Imola is closer to Ferrari headquarters. Of course, that is where SKR heads next week. Next week, SKR stays in Italy. A 200-kilometer trip up the road from this track. We'll get to Imola. Of course, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, previously known as the San Marino Grand Prix. Why was it called the San Marino Grand Prix? Was it in San Marino? No. It's about half an hour away from San Marino. But they had to call it San Marino because you couldn't have two Italian Grand Prix. Still a law that stands today. You can't have two Grand Prix in a country. That's why you have the US Grand Prix in COTA, and the other two have their own name. The Las Vegas Grand Prix and the Miami GP. So it's a pretty silly rule when you think about it. Logic in P2 is going to be hoping to shake off this queue behind him. He has shaken them off a little. 1 second is the gap, but he needs to get up the road. He needs to get in contact with that Mercedes. Can't let him keep running away. Skull in P7. Top performing Ferrari. Just keeping our eyes on the Italian brand. Another Italian brand. But that's all it is. It's an Italian brand. It's not an Italian team. Alfa Romeo. Obviously the Sauber team. Based in Switzerland. Now known as the Kick Sauber team. But in fact, at the beginning of the season, Audi took full ownership of that team. Hasn't been rebranded to Audi, and it won't be until 2026. But that team is fully owned by Audi since January. And I'm sure that's one team that will be looking forward to the regulation changes. As things stand, they're not having much fun. Venom, Convoy, still looking to trade positions. Where is Logic? Logic hasn't been able to shake off that queue. Now 0.6 of a second, so Convoy actually coming back at him. And just to have a look at, that's what I thought. Logic has been defending for an awful long time, and surely can't have a battery that's in very good condition. And eventually he has to fall victim of DRS. It might be on this lap. It's got the inside, but Convoy will have the inside for the next. We're gonna go wheel to wheel. And I think Convoy's done him. Yes, he has. Convoy up into P2. And now we'll have a look at the Haas. Will the Haas be able to get up the road and catch Afrodox? He's been in a league of his own so far. Logic goes down a position. Seemed like he was holding that queue for a while. We'll see if he was. Convoy isn't able to get away. Well, then we've just got a lot of drivers with very similar pace. Convoy is able to get away. Well, then Logic may have been holding them up a little. And so far, that does not seem to be the case. Logic all over the back of the Haas. And I think next time around, when we get to the main straight, when we get out of Parabolica, Logic's going to open up that DRS. And he's going to have another go. Get himself back up into P2. Having said that, he's got to keep an eye on the mirror. Venom's going to have the same idea. Here we go, two cars with DRS, one Alpine, one Aston Martin, and a Haas trying to defend. But he didn't do much defending. He went to the outside, let those two have a go at it. And that worked out That worked out perfectly. I think you call that intelligent driving. Cardboy going to the outside, almost backing off. Really made no defense. Two cars went through. There wasn't enough space. They made contact, and Convoy was able to make a switchback and go back into P2. As a result, Logic and Venom have lost the position. Pantry Star now up into P3. Podium sitters have changed. Pantry Star all over the back of the Haas. Ferrari power versus Ferrari power, and none of them are Ferraris. Can anyone in the comment section guess the last Italian team to win in Monza? Afrodox leads the way. I thought if Convoy would be able to make some sort of an impact on that gap, but the gap continues to grow. 5.7 seconds. All of these guys will be asking for a safety car to bring that leader back into the equation. Or maybe they'll be hoping for a safety car a little bit later down the road. Most of these cars started on the medium compound. Probably be looking to go a little further on into this race. Some of them may really stretch the tyre as long as possible and then get on the soft. There's always the risk of a puncture. And long before you get to a puncture, those tyres aren't going to be in great shape. Just not going to be setting the lap times. Afrodox is in the lead. So I think all of these cars behind him, they'll just be able to react to whatever the leader is doing. Seems to be no risk of double stacking because everyone there at the front is, well, it's all different manufacturers. Yeah, the top 9 are all different manufacturers. No, there's 2 Alpines in there. Of course, something had to ruin it. Logic, speaking of Alpine, gets himself back up into P2. But as you can see, these two, their pace is just so close. They're not able to get away from each other, and all that means is they go back and forth in the DRS zones. Even though they seem to be a little quicker than Pantry Star and Venom behind them, they're bringing them along with, because they're battling between the two of them. Such a frustrating feeling when you'd like to start working on that gap ahead of you, but you really can't. You can't concentrate on that gap ahead of you because all the risk, all the threat is not coming from the guy up the road. It's coming from the cars in the car in the mirror. And if there's several cars, well, that just makes things worse. Logic P2, Convoy P3, Pantry Star P4, and Venom in P5. All of those cars could potentially take P2. One of those cars has come into the pits first. It's Convoy. Convoy maybe looking for the undercut, looking to jump those cars ahead of him. Sorry about that, my phone rang. Afrodox still out front, 6.5 seconds. Pantry Star in P3, Logic in P2. Those positions still far from decided. Venom P4, Phase has fallen off the back of that queue. We've got a retirement, and this may very well lead to. There we go. We are under safety car conditions. It's lap 13 of 27. We are almost at half race distance. Now, if you remember correctly, one of those cars came into the pits looking to do a possible undercut. That was Convoy. And what's going to happen now is all of these cars in the lead, they're going to go in single file. And Convoy, unexpectedly, he's going to be leading this race. Of course, we are under safety car conditions. Convoy won't be going at full speed. I think he's actually missed out. He has missed out. Safety car has actually worked against him there. All he needed was to be a little bit further down the track when that safety car was called. Safety car convenience isn't just about what lap it comes out on. It really depends where you are on track when that safety car comes out. If you're about to start a lap when the safety car comes out, you are at a serious disadvantage than the guy who's just about to see the pit entry when the safety car comes out. What happened there with Convoy? He pit, and then immediately there was a safety car. He just got caught out of position because everyone else got a free pit stop. He had to drive around slowly while everyone else was in the pits. Afrodox, Pantry Star, Venom, that is your top three now. We've had quite the switch. Drivers were in, give or take, the same position throughout the race, trading places, but no big changes in position. But now we've seen some serious changes. That's as a result of the safety car. Remember, some of these drivers would have been close to a teammate. There may have been double stacking. Some of them would have been in the pits longer than they wanted. That would have translated into positions lost. Of course, we saw a safety car in the sprint race. It was a relatively long safety car. But from what we can see on that track map, we just have two cars at the rear of the field. I think it's a AlphaTauri and a Mercedes. Those cars should be able to catch that field by the end of the lap, and hopefully we have a very short safety car and get underway. We've had two retirements. Logic was looking very quick up until the point of his retirement, and then Dixie Killer, he didn't get to show much of his talents this evening. Afrodox is going to be in charge of the restart. Pantry Star will be the man in charge of trying to stop him. Venom P3, Phase P4, I was about to say the only driver in the field with a penalty, but that is incorrect. Chums has a penalty, Revolution also has a penalty. Might as well take the time behind the safety car to see what those are. All three penalties I just mentioned are 3-second penalties. Safety car in this lap, there's the confirmation. We will be back underway shortly. See, there's a few of you watching at home. I've only got 2 likes, so if you haven't left a like, leave a like. It's free. It's not much in this world that's free, so just leave a like. We're about to get going. When will that acceleration come? Afrodox will decide. And there we go, he's already decided. Coming out of Parabolica, he's coming already at full tilt. Pantry Star 9/10 of a second behind in P2. And this is the sort of thing you got to be so careful with at these safety car restarts. You don't want that guy just to get a jump on you. And that's exactly what happened. Pantry Star, Venom, FaZe getting very close to the back of Venom there in the chicane. Avoiding contact, it appears. Skull in P5. Top performing Ferrari. If you're looking for top performing Ferrari power, that's of course Pantry Star in P2. Car off the track, that's Venom. Venom off the circuit. Means the Ferrari makes up a position, means Mr. M makes up a position. Venom down into P6, just ahead of his teammate Spikes in P7. And we got the second of the two Ferraris, will be P8, Andre P9 in the AlphaTauri. Further back, Chums. Was the driver that led for a very long time in that sprint race. Then we started to see him drop, and now he's holding on for everything he's got. Wants to get that 1 point in the feature race, but I think he may have just lost it. Afrodox in the front, Revolution at the rear. So we have a Mercedes out front and a Mercedes right at the back. Two very different days for the Mercedes drivers. FaZe in P2, but remember he's got that penalty, so if he intends on finishing in the position shown on the timing sheets, he needs to ensure he has a gap equal to those penalties to the car behind him, and at the moment that is not the case, and that is not the case for quite some way down the road, because he's got a DRS train behind him. So if the checkered flag were to fall right now, FaZe could find himself in P6 from a possible P2. Drivers will be hoping for no more safety cars, so that everybody can work on extending these gaps, minimizing the harm caused by their penalties. But a safety car late in this race is going to hurt everybody who has populated that penalties column. Said we might get a Ferrari on the podium. It might just happen. Skull in P4. Rear of the field, Revolution. Remember, this was Smurf. It's such a good sprint race. Held his position for incredibly long. There's some incredibly quick competition. And then come the feature race, he wasn't able to emulate the performance. He's fallen down the field. He's down in P13, out of the points, and he'll be hoping for a safety car or something just to come and mix things up. And that's the story of two worlds. Guys at the front, that's usually the last thing they want. The guys at the back outside the points, they're the ones usually praying for a safety car. Afrodox leads from FaZe. That gap's not as big as you'd think. Afrodox was dominating at a stage, but now the gap just 1.3 seconds between the leader and FaZe. I wonder if Afrodox made some sort of mistake. But Afrodox is on the hard compound. FaZe should have the advantage, at least for the time being, and that's a Ferrari. That's a Ferrari. Got a little aggressive, thought about making the pass on the Alfa Romeo, then just found himself on the wrong part of the circuit. Had to back out of it, and in the process he's lost momentum. He's lost that position to Pantry Star. He was briefly in front, and he's also lost position to Mr. M. So potential podium spot for the Ferrari. He's got to do it all over again. He's now in P5. This was the man he tried to pass. Pantry Star in P3. will have caused him just to lose a little bit of touch with the man ahead. FaZe in second place. Said that gap wasn't very large. Afrodox has responded to my comments. Went up to 1.9 seconds briefly, now back to 1.7. Seems like FaZe has the advantage on him on the straight. If you just look at that delta on the straights, FaZe seems to make up a bit of time on the straights. I wonder if Afrodox just running a little bit more downforce. It's not usually the case here in Monza. Of course, there were two circuits on the calendar once upon a time where F1 cars would arrive and look quite weird. One of those tracks was Monza. There was no such thing as DRS at the time. That rear wing was solid. And when you had a track with where downforce wasn't needed, they used to turn that thing completely up. It looked like there was no rear wing. The other track they did that at was Hockenheim, where cars were on full throttle for more than 80% of the race distance. 90% of the race distance. Of course, only slowing down for 3 short chicanes and the stadium section. But that Hockenheim circuit has been unfortunately lost to the elements. The track is no longer there. All of the tar was uprooted, and in its place grass and trees were planted. So there is no old circuit to go and look at. I don't know if I'm too fond of the new one. Mr. Rem in P4, remember what a good race he's having. We haven't spoken about him too much, but he's come up from the rear of the field in that sprint race. He retired. He was the one retirement in that sprint race, and that meant he had to start in P16, giving himself a real handful in this race. Don't know if that's been all positions he's made up on his own, or if the safety car worked out a little bit for him. Mr. M all the way up into P4, and that could very well be a driver of the day performance. FaZe in P2, he can see the leader up the road from him at 1.4 seconds, and he's got to use the advantage he has of those medium tires, because the medium tires will fall off first, and when they do, Afrodox will just be able to breathe a sigh of relief. His tires will come into their time, the mediums will fall out of theirs, and Afrodox should have an easy finish to this race. The only risk he should have now is if FaZe can catch him in the next couple of laps and use those mediums to get past. But he'll also have the peace of mind of knowing that FaZe has a 3-second penalty. So that 1.5 second gap, well, let's say 4.5 second gap. Mr. Rem in P5, Venom now up into P4, so those cars trading places. Pantry Star been in P3 for a while now. Skull had a go at him and it was unsuccessful. Pantry Star was able to hold on to P3. About to say FaZe in a comfortable P2, but not quite. He's got that 3-second penalty, and Pantry Star just 2.8 seconds behind him. So as things stand, Pantry Star would jump the Alpine. So that has to be FaZe's first target. Just go to the penalty screen real quick just to get an update on things. FaZe hasn't added any more penalties to his name. He remains on 3 seconds. Then we have 3 seconds for Venom. We have 10 seconds for Skull, 3 seconds Convoy, oh I can't read all those, Convoy, Louis, Spikes, Chum, Smurf and Revolution each have a 3-second penalty. the one driver on the softs, that is Revolution. It's 20 seconds adrift from the rest of the field. His teammate up in the lead, that's Afrodox, leading by 2.5 seconds. Then a further 2.5 seconds down the road is Pantry Star. Crucial he keeps that gap within 3 seconds. Doesn't need to make the pass on the road. Just needs to get within 3 seconds and stay within 3 seconds. He is already there. It's just awfully close. 2.8 seconds is the gap. He does have the hard tyre. So when those mediums do start falling off, Afrodox should be able to extend his lead. And Pantry Star should be able to come back at the Alpine. Making that penalty hurt a little more. Gap continues to grow, 2.7. Gap between FaZe and Pantry. That's crucial. It's gone over the 3-second mark, so FaZe would hold on to this P2 if things ended now. Venom P4, Mr. Rem. He was briefly in P4, lost that position to the Aston Martin. Then we have Skull. He's in P6. And luckily for him, no damage. We saw him have a bit of a scuffle up the road with Pantry Star when he was in P4, attempting to get onto the podium. Things just didn't quite work out. The closest battle I can see right now is between Venom and Mr. Rem, fighting for P4. Andre also in a battle of his own. He's just behind Mr. Rem, still looking to make up a position before the end of the race. It's lap 24.27. I think that means we're in safe territory when it comes to the safety car. Never seen a safety car come out with less than 3 laps to go. We are in safe territory. We've had our safety car for the race. Drivers at the front can relax. Drivers with penalties can breathe a sigh of relief. This is FaZe. He's had a good race. He's done exactly what he needed to do. He knew he had that penalty. He knew he had to open up the gap. And he's done that. I thought Pantry Star would be able to come back at him, because those mediums will fall off. That hasn't been the case. He's been able to hold those mediums together quite nicely. Afrodox on the hard. He has no worries of tyre wear. The tyre should still have quite a bit of life on it. Leading AlphaTauri. Andre in P6. Skull just ahead. We may have a battle between Andre and Skull on our hands. Lap 25 of 27. Ferrari versus AlphaTauri. The only 2 Italian teams on the grid. And the AlphaTauri comes out on top. Andre gets past Skull. Not too much of a defense there. Not too much of a battle. But now Skull will be able to come back at Andre. He should have DRS in the next DRS zone. We also have a battle going on down the road between Mr. Rem and Convoy. Convoy looking to make up a few positions, got caught out in a very nasty way earlier on in the race by the safety car. Seems like Andre just opening up the gap now on Skull. He has the pace at this time in the race. He's on the mediums. I really thought the mediums would be dropping off at this stage, but they've held together really well. Afrodox leads the way. FaZe in P2. Pantry Star, Venom, Andre, Skull. Convoy, Mr. Rem, Top Gun. And the second Ferrari of Louis making up the top 10. As for the 4 drivers outside the top 10, not much hope of any of them getting in the top 10 unless there's a mistake up front. Gap between Louis and Spikes. Gap between P10 and 11. 4.5 seconds. So all these top 10 drivers need to do is bring the car home in a straight line with all its pieces intact. And they'll finish in the points. Skull picking up a 3 second penalty late on in the race, and that could seriously hurt him. Convoy 2 seconds down the road from Skull. Convoy has a penalty of his own. Let's just try and get an indication of what those penalties are worth. And well, Skull, I even forgot, and I read that a few moments ago, but Skull now has 13 seconds worth of penalties, and my maths is not good enough for me to even try, but I think that would put him down in P12. That could drop Skull from P6 right out of the points. That's how harsh penalties can be. They don't have any excuse. You can't say I was pushing and that's why I cut the limits. The man out front, he's got no penalties. Of course, Monza, one of those circuits with lots of chicanes. Very easy to go over the white lines. Next thing you know, you're picking up penalties. And also another place to invalidate laps is right here on the exit of Ascari. You're just trying to use as much track as possible, and you inevitably cost yourself 3 seconds. So there's your leader. He goes over the line to win the feature race. He won the sprint race. Had a fantastic sprint race to come through the field, and he had a more featureless race in the feature race. Just started from pole, took it to the end, won the race. I think he got the fastest lap. Let's just see if we still have time to check on that. He in fact did not get the fastest lap, so he won't get the 26 points. FaZe actually got the fastest lap at the end there, and he was able to have a gap big enough for Pantry Star to hold on to his P2. It's a good result for FaZe. And of course, instead of the normal 18 points for P2, he'll pick up that extra point. Mr. Rem picks up driver of the day. As we predicted earlier, had a fantastic race to come from the back of the field. It's an interesting sprint race. Rain is always fun. We now move on to next week, where we will have, of course, SAFRL will be back on Monday and Wednesday night with Tier 1, Tier 2. We move on to DRS on Thursday, and then we're back to SKR next week for round 6, again in Italy at Imola. So I hope you join us then. Although in fact, join us for all our streams. If you haven't left a like, leave a like. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And until next time, cheers.